The wind, a spectral herald, swept across the ancient hallowed slopes of Tara, the very heart of Ireland's sovereignty. It whispered tales of kings crowned beneath the vast, indifferent sky, of destinies woven and unraveled on this sacred ground. But in the year 980 of the Common Era, the wind carried a different kind of prophecy, a murmur of steel and thunder, a harbinger of an enemy not merely seeking conquest, but the shattering of established order. An armada of Norsemen, their dragon-proud ships having sliced through the unforgiving gray seas, had arrived. They were not driven by a simple thirst for land, but by a more potent, more terrifying hunger. The hunger for glory, for a victory so profound it would echo through the sagas for 1,000 years. And with them, they carried a secret, a weapon of war that the proud warriors of Ireland, steeped in the traditions of their ancestors, had never before encountered. It was a concept, a formation, a brutal symphony of coordinated violence that would redefine the very nature of battlefield engagement, turning the familiar dance of war into a terrifying, alien spectacle. This was not just another raid, it was an ideological assault, a challenge to the very fabric of Irish martial pride, delivered with the chilling precision of a surgeon's blade. The air itself seemed to hum with the tension, a palpable static electricity generated by the clash of two worlds, two philosophies of warfare, poised on the precipice of an unprecedented confrontation. The stage was set, not with banners and trumpets, but with the grim, silent anticipation of men who understood that on this day, the earth of Tara would drink deeply, and the echoes of their struggle would be etched into the very soul of Ireland. The question hung heavy. What force, born of the icy fjords and the long nights, could possibly overcome the deep-rooted strength and sheer numbers of the Irish defenders on their own sacred soil? The answer lay not in brute strength alone, but in a cunning, terrifying innovation that would soon carve its name into the annals of military history. Michael Sechnaill, the High King, stood as the embodiment of Ireland's defiance. His gaze, sharp and unwavering, swept over the assembled legions of his warriors. More than 2,000 of Ireland's finest, their hearts swelling with pride and a fierce, unyielding loyalty, formed a formidable bulwark on the slopes of Tara. They were the sons of the soil, their ancestors having defended these lands for generations, their courage forged in the crucible of countless skirmishes and battles. Faith in their cause, in their king, and in the sheer weight of their numbers, bolstered their resolve. They were the established might, the entrenched power, the very essence of Irish martial tradition. Yet beneath the veneer of their confident ranks, an unease began to stir, a subtle tremor of the unknown. For the invaders, the men from the north, possessed a weapon that transcended the traditional understanding of warfare. They were not merely a collection of fierce individuals, but a cohesive, terrifying entity, animated by a singular, deadly purpose. The Vikings, in their alien wisdom, had conceived of a method of engagement that would dismantle the very concept of a defensive line, a strategy so ruthlessly efficient it bordered on the supernatural. Their arrival was not just a physical threat, it was an intellectual one, a challenge to the prevailing wisdom of how battles were won and lost. The Irish, with their ancestral battle cries and their well-honed skills, were about to face an opponent whose tactics had been honed in a different forge, a smithy of war where innovation and utter ruthlessness were the primary metals. The stage was set for a clash not just of men, but of methodologies, a confrontation where the familiar rhythms of combat would be brutally interrupted by an emergent, devastating new art of war. The question lingered, unspoken but universally felt. How could the steadfast strength of Ireland withstand the chilling, calculated storm that was about to break upon its shores? The invaders, a tide of hardened Norsemen, did not approach Tara as a monolithic force but as a meticulously engineered instrument of destruction. Their strategy, a stark departure from the chaotic melee that characterized most warfare of the era, was built upon a foundation of disciplined tactical aggregation. Imagine, if you will, not individual warriors charging headlong, but rather 12 men, bound by a shared intent and a chilling synchronicity, forming an unbreakable wedge. Each warrior within these compact units wielded the formidable Danseker, the two-handed Dane axe, a weapon capable of cleaving through mail and bone with equal ease. This was not a random assortment of fighters. It was a living, breathing phalanx, its apex a point of concentrated destructive power. They advanced not in a ragged line, but in a precise inverted V, a formation designed to penetrate, to disrupt, and to shatter. The psychological impact of this visual alone was profound. Instead of a broad front to be met and blunted, the Irish faced a series of sharp, irresistible lances driving deep into their ranks. Furthermore, the choreography of their assault was a testament to a level of battlefield communication and trust rarely witnessed. Each movement, each axe swing, was not an isolated act of aggression, but a calculated contribution to the collective momentum. They didn't merely fight, they systematically dismantled. The axe formation acted as a biological entity, its 12-man cells functioning as independent yet interconnected organs of war. When one cell encountered resistance, its immediate neighbors would flow around the obstruction, maintaining the integrity of the wedge, ensuring that no gap, however small, could be exploited by the defenders. Think of it as a swarm of metallic locusts, their purpose to consume and obliterate, advancing with an almost serene, terrifying efficiency. The sheer coordination required to maintain such a formation under the duress of battle, with the clamor of war deafening and the stakes of life and death immediate, speaks volumes about their training and their absolute conviction in this novel approach. Consequently, the Irish lines, accustomed to facing a more conventional, albeit fierce onslaught, found themselves outmaneuvered and overwhelmed. Their traditional defensive formations, designed to absorb and repel frontal assaults, were ill-suited to counter this predatory wedge. The Viking V did not merely batter the Irish shield wall, it bored through it, creating instant breaches, isolating pockets of defenders, and sowing immediate chaos. Each successful penetration was not just a tactical gain, but a visible tear in the fabric of Irish resolve. The sight of their meticulously formed ranks being so effortlessly rent asunder was a profound psychological blow, far more devastating than the physical casualties alone. Now, consider how this applies when you face a challenge that seems to bypass your usual defenses. It's not about hitting harder, but about understanding how the attacker is approaching the problem. This tactical innovation was not merely about offensive might, it was also a masterful application of psychological warfare. The relentless, almost surgical precision of the Viking advance instilled a primal fear. The constant, synchronized swing of the great axes, the unwavering forward thrust of the wedges created an aura of inevitability. The Irish warriors, expecting a battle of attrition, a test of endurance and brute strength, were instead confronted with a strategy that seemed to defy the very nature of combat as they understood it. The effectiveness of the axe formation lay in its ability to exploit not just physical weaknesses in the enemy's disposition, but also their psychological vulnerabilities, their ingrained expectations of how war should unfold. This was a primal scream of dominance, delivered not through noise, but through a terrifyingly efficient application of force and foresight. The initial shockwaves of the Viking advance sent tremors of disarray through the Irish ranks, a psychological unraveling that began not with a roar, but with a chilling, methodical dissection. The Irish warriors, accustomed to the visceral, often chaotic clash of shield against shield, found their familiar strategies rendered impotent. Their deep-rooted formations designed to absorb and repel the momentum of a direct assault were being bypassed with an unnerving ease. The axe formation, a tightly packed phalanx of 12, each man a cog in a brutal rotating mechanism, did not seek to meet the Irish frontally and grind them down. Instead, it acted like a series of piercing probes, designed to find and exploit the weakest points in the Celtic line, to carve out immediate, irrecoverable breaches. Each successful penetration was a visible wound, not just to the physical body of the army, but to its very morale. The sight of their proud shield wall, a symbol of their collective strength being so effortlessly rent apart, was a profound psychological blow, far more destabilizing than the immediate physical toll. Now consider how this psychological impact manifested on the battlefield. The Irish, trained to fight as cohesive units to rely on the unbroken chain of their comrades, witnessed their carefully constructed lines dissolving into isolated pockets of resistance. The disciplined advance of the Vikings meant that as one wedge punched through, another was already poised to exploit the resulting confusion, preventing any attempt at immediate reorganization or counterattack. This relentless pressure, this constant disruption of their established order, bred a sense of helplessness. It was akin to a skilled surgeon operating with an unfamiliar, yet incredibly precise instrument, able to bypass the expected defenses and target vital areas with unerring accuracy. The sheer visual spectacle of these compact axe-wielding units moving with such unified purpose, slicing through the broader, more dispersed Irish ranks, was a testament to a different kind of warfare, one that prioritized surgical efficiency over brute force. Furthermore, the effectiveness of the axe formation extended beyond mere battlefield efficacy. It represented a fundamental shift in the philosophy of engagement. The Vikings understood that breaking an enemy's will could be as decisive as breaking their bodies. By consistently demonstrating their ability to overcome Irish defenses with such novel tactics, they were not just winning individual skirmishes, they were systematically dismantling the Irish belief in their own invincibility. This was not the chaotic, often individualistic valor of the Irish warrior, but a cold, calculated, and deeply unsettling form of collective violence. The Irish were accustomed to facing overwhelming odds through sheer grit and determination. Here, they faced an enemy that seemed to possess an almost preternatural understanding of battlefield dynamics, an enemy that could exploit the very cohesion of their army against them. Consequently, the Irish attempts to adapt were often too late and too disorganized. The rapid succession of breaches created by the Viking wedges meant that their commanders struggled to redeploy troops effectively. A unit moved to shore up one gap would find itself immediately targeted by another advancing wedge, perpetuating a cycle of reactive desperation. This constant state of being outmaneuvered, of their defensive strategies being rendered obsolete in real time, fostered a gnawing sense of futility. The very ground of Tara, once a symbol of their enduring strength, began to feel like a trap, its familiar terrain offering no sanctuary from this relentless, innovative assault. The battle was not merely a contest of arms. It was a stark demonstration of how a revolutionary tactical idea, executed with ruthless discipline, could shatter even the most deeply entrenched military traditions. The sacred hill of Tara, once a bastion of Irish might, became a macabre altar under the relentless onslaught. The great Dane axes wielded by the disciplined Norsemen were no longer mere weapons. They were instruments of a terrifying art form, a whirlwind of lethal motion that transformed the battlefield into a churning vortex of carnage. Each swing, each parry, each devastating cleave was a brushstroke on a canvas of crimson, painting a stark tableau of Viking dominance. The sheer ferocity of the attack, coupled with the innovative tactical application, meant that the Irish were not merely fighting a battle, they were enduring a systematic dismantling. The coordinated advance of the Norse units, each cell functioning with the precision of a well-oiled machine, ensured that the Irish defensive line, already compromised, had no opportunity to regroup or reform. Imagine a relentless tide, not of water, but of sharpened steel, each wave crashing with calculated force, eroding the very foundations of the Irish resistance. The visual of the axes, long, heavy, and undeniably brutal, spinning and descending, was not just a testament to individual strength but to the collective power of their synchronized assault. This was not the chaotic fury of a general melee, it was a controlled, almost surgical extermination. Moreover, the impact of this brutal efficiency resonated far beyond the physical toll. The psychological warfare inherent in such a display was devastating. The Irish, accustomed to facing enemies who fought with a more individualistic valor, were confronted with a unified, almost impersonal force. The relentless forward surge of the Viking wedges, impervious to the desperate attempts to stem their advance, fostered a profound sense of inevitability. It was a stark contrast to the valorous, often heroic last stands they were accustomed to. Here, heroism was being systematically erased by sheer, unyielding tactical superiority. Now consider how this applies when you face a problem that seems to possess an answer you haven't even conceived of. The Vikings weren't just stronger, they were smarter in their application of force. Their strategy was a living entity, adapting and reforming as it moved, ensuring that no matter where the Irish sought to shore up their defenses, the Norsemen found new avenues of penetration. This created a feedback loop of despair. The more they tried to resist, the more their formations were exposed, and the more the Vikings' confidence and efficacy grew. This unyielding pressure, this constant disruption, began to break the spirit of the Irish defenders. The sacred ground of Tara, the very symbol of their heritage and sovereignty, was being desecrated not just by bloodshed, but by the annihilation of their martial pride. The tales of their ancestors, of legendary battles fought and won, must have seemed distant and hollow in the face of this new, terrifying reality. The Vikings' approach was not just about conquering territory, it was about conquering the very idea of Irish invincibility. They demonstrated that traditional courage and numbers, while valuable, could be utterly negated by a superior tactical framework. It was a brutal lesson in the evolution of warfare, a stark reminder that adaptability and innovation could triumph over established might. The battlefield became a testament to this principle, a place where the ancient art of war was being rewritten in blood and steel, with the Viking axe formation as its terrifying new pen. The echoes of the falling axes, the cries of the wounded, and the chilling silence of the surrendered were not just the sounds of a battle lost, but the death knell of an era, a testament to the power of a single, devastatingly effective idea. The very act of the Viking axe formation's success transcended mere military victory. It represented a profound revelation about the nature of strategic advantage. It illuminated the principle that true power on the battlefield often lies not in the overwhelming force of arms, but in the elegant simplicity of a well-conceived concept, executed with absolute discipline. The Irish, with their deep-seated martial traditions and their formidable numbers, were a testament to the strength of established order. They fought with the courage of men defending their homeland, their bravery unquestioned. However, the Vikings' innovation introduced a discordant note into this familiar symphony of war. Their approach was akin to understanding the underlying code of a complex system, finding a hidden vulnerability, and exploiting it with a few precise commands. This wasn't about brute strength overpowering brute strength. It was about intellectual leverage, about finding a more efficient path to achieve the desired outcome. Furthermore, this battle served as a stark demonstration of how psychological resilience can be eroded not just by physical attrition, but by the sheer unnerving novelty of an opponent's tactics. The Irish were confronted with a paradigm shift, a method of engagement that bypassed their ingrained reactions and expectations. Imagine facing a chess master who, instead of moving traditional pieces, introduces entirely new figures onto the board, figures that operate by rules you haven't yet deciphered. The initial bewilderment and the subsequent struggle to adapt create a significant disadvantage, a cognitive load that detracts from the immediate demands of combat. The Viking axe formation, in its unnerving synchronicity and its ability to cleave through established defenses, induced precisely this kind of disorienting effect. It was a testament to the fact that a well-executed surprise, particularly one rooted in strategic thinking, could shatter even the most hardened resolve. Conversely, the long-term implications of such a tactical victory extended far beyond the immediate aftermath of the Battle of Tara. It planted a seed of doubt in the minds of other nations, a recognition that the established norms of warfare were not immutable. The effectiveness of this formation, its ability to dismantle seemingly insurmountable odds, would undoubtedly inspire imitation and adaptation by other military leaders. It was a disruptive innovation, akin to the introduction of gunpowder or the stirrup in subsequent eras, fundamentally altering the landscape of military strategy. The psychological impact on the defeated was also immense. It wasn't just a loss of life, but a profound questioning of their own martial superiority and their deeply held beliefs about how wars were fought and won. Another crucial layer to consider is the inherent efficiency of the Viking approach. By dividing into smaller, self-contained units capable of independent yet coordinated action, they minimized the logistical complexities often associated with large armies. Each 12-man cell was a self-sufficient engine of destruction, capable of operating with a degree of autonomy that allowed for greater flexibility and responsiveness on the chaotic battlefield. This contrasted sharply with the more monolithic structure of the Irish army, which likely relied on centralized command and control that could be disrupted by the very breaches the Vikings were creating. Now, consider how this applies when you face a complex problem that requires a multifaceted solution. The Viking strategy offered a decentralized yet unified response, a testament to the power of modularity in warfare. Their success was not merely a matter of ferocity, but of a superior organizational principle, a testament to the idea that the way you structure your force can be as potent as the force itself. The Battle of Tara, beyond its immediate strategic implications, offers a profound lens through which to examine the evolutionary pressures that shape martial doctrine. The Norsemen, in their adoption and refinement of the axe formation, did not merely stumble upon a superior tactic. They embodied a cultural predisposition towards adaptive warfare, a willingness to shed tradition in the face of demonstrable efficacy. Their society, forged through centuries of seafaring, exploration, and constant territorial skirmishes across diverse landscapes, fostered a mindset that valued innovation and pragmatism above rigid adherence to ancestral methods. This is distinct from the Irish, whose martial heritage was more deeply rooted in land-based defense and the valorization of individual prowess within a more static hierarchical structure. Now consider how this applies when you face a challenge that requires not just strength, but a fundamental rethinking of your approach. The Viking success wasn't just about the axes, it was about a cultural engine of continuous improvement, a societal mechanism that rewarded battlefield ingenuity. Furthermore, this tactical breakthrough highlights the emergent properties of collective action when guided by sophisticated conceptual frameworks. The 12-man unit was not merely a grouping, it was a micro-organization with its own internal dynamics, its own specialized roles, and its own communication protocols, all operating in seamless concert. Think of a flock of starlings, each bird responding to its immediate neighbors yet collectively producing breathtaking aerial ballets. The axe formation achieved a similar, albeit far more deadly effect on the ground. This decentralized yet cohesive structure allowed for an unparalleled responsiveness to the fluid chaos of battle, a stark contrast to the more command and control-oriented formations that could be more easily paralyzed by decapitation or disruption of their central leadership. This modularity, this ability for smaller units to function and advance independently while contributing to the overall objective, proved to be a decisive advantage. Building on this, however, the sheer psychological impact of such a novel, efficient killing machine cannot be overstated. The Irish, expecting a certain kind of brutal yet familiar engagement, were confronted with something alien. The relentless, almost robotic precision of the Viking wedges, each unit seemingly predestined to carve its path through the defender's ranks, would have instilled a deep sense of futility. It's akin to facing a meticulously orchestrated performance of destruction, where every movement is calculated and every outcome appears preordained. This psychological warfare, embedded within the very fabric of the tactical approach, served to break the enemy's will to resist even before the final blows were struck, demonstrating that the mind can be as potent a weapon as the sharpest steel. Conversely, the Battle of Tara underscores a critical principle in the study of military history: the often unforeseen consequences of technological or tactical innovation. The Dane axe, while not new, was employed within a novel organizational framework that amplified its destructive potential exponentially. This is not unlike how the longbow, in English hands during later centuries, revolutionized battlefield dynamics not just because of its power, but because of how it was integrated into disciplined formations. The Vikings, by marrying a formidable weapon with an equally formidable tactical concept, created a synergy that proved devastatingly effective, forcing a re-evaluation of what constituted battlefield superiority. Another crucial layer is the socio-economic context that likely underpinned such tactical development. The Viking world, with its emphasis on trade, raiding, and constant exploration, fostered a highly competitive environment. Success in these endeavors depended on maximizing efficiency and minimizing risk, principles that would naturally translate to their military endeavors. A formation that could achieve decisive victory with fewer casualties and less expenditure of energy would be highly valued in such a society. This pragmatic, results-oriented ethos directly informed their willingness to experiment and adopt new methods, viewing warfare as a problem to be solved with the most effective tools available, be they physical or conceptual. Reflecting on this journey through the stark realities of Tara, we can perceive a subtle yet powerful convergence of forces. The echoes of the clash reverberate, not merely as a testament to the clash of arms, but as a profound illustration of how deeply ingrained assumptions can be both a source of strength and of vulnerability. The very fabric of established order, so seemingly robust, proved susceptible to a meticulously crafted disruption, a testament to the fact that perceived invincibility can be undone by an unexpected angle of attack. It is as if a great ancient tree, deeply rooted and seemingly unshakable, finds its foundations undermined not by a frontal assault, but by a persistent, insidious erosion from an unforeseen quarter. The narrative has thus far illuminated the intricate interplay between the tangible instruments of war and the intangible architecture of belief that underpins every conflict. In light of these insights, the narrative pivot towards its ultimate resolution becomes more discernible. We have witnessed the unfolding of a dynamic where the familiar contours of martial engagement were reshaped, not by a mere increase in brute force, but by a transformative re-envisioning of its application. The strategic acumen displayed, the sheer audacity of its execution, suggests a deeper current flowing beneath the surface of mere conquest. It speaks to the enduring principle that true mastery often lies in understanding the underlying currents, in perceiving the unseen pathways that can lead to decisive outcomes. The cumulative effect of these observations suggests a profound truth about the nature of dominance itself, hinting at how perception and execution can intertwine to forge an unassailable advantage. As we pivot towards the final reflection, the conceptual threads woven throughout these accounts begin to coalesce into a more unified tapestry. The story of Terra is not merely an isolated incident of historical conflict. It serves as a potent metaphor for the broader human endeavor. It underscores the perpetual tension between tradition and innovation, between the comfort of the known and the imperative of adaptation. The lessons gleaned from this ancient battlefield resonate because they touch upon fundamental aspects of strategy, psychology, and the very essence of overcoming seemingly insurmountable challenges. The journey thus far has prepared us to grasp the enduring significance of this narrative, its capacity to illuminate timeless truths about human endeavor, and the relentless pursuit of advantage, setting the stage for a final contemplation of its profound and lasting echoes. The dust has settled on Tara, yet the wind still carries the whispers of that fateful day. The legend of the axe formation is not merely a tale of Viking prowess but a profound testament to a universal truth, that the most formidable walls are not always made of stone or steel, but of rigid expectation and unquestioned tradition. The Irish, in their magnificent courage, stood as the embodiment of a deeply entrenched way of life, a bulwark of inherited strength. Yet they were undone not by a lack of bravery but by an absence of foresight, by an inability to perceive the subtle shift in the tide of conflict. The Norsemen, driven by a different imperative, a culture that thrived on adaptation and the relentless pursuit of advantage, understood that true victory often lies not in meeting force with equal force, but in dismantling the very framework of the opponent's strength. They did not simply fight. They redefined the battlefield, proving that a single brilliant idea, executed with unwavering discipline, could shatter even the most deeply rooted power. This echoes through the ages, a persistent reminder that innovation is the sharpest blade in the arsenal of progress. The world is not static. It is a ceaseless flux, and those who cling too tightly to the methods of yesterday risk being swept away by the currents of tomorrow. The axe formation, in its brutal elegance, serves as a powerful archetype for any challenge we face, whether in the grand arenas of nations or the intimate landscapes of our own lives. It compels us to look beyond the obvious, to question the accepted, and to seek out the strategic advantage that lies in understanding the fundamental nature of the problem itself. The Norsemen did not just win a battle. They delivered a paradigm shift, a stark lesson in the power of intelligent application, a demonstration that a well-honed concept can carve through entrenched resistance with a precision that sheer might can never achieve. The true practice begins now, in observing the world with an open mind, in seeking to understand the underlying structures that govern our challenges. It is in recognizing that our own most deeply held beliefs, our most cherished traditions, can become the very chains that bind us if we fail to examine them with critical clarity. The legacy of Terra is not one of mere conquest, but of a timeless insight, that the most profound victories are often won not on the field of brute force, but in the fertile ground of the mind, where new strategies are conceived, and the courage to implement them is found. Let the legend of the axe formation serve as an enduring call to adaptability, to the relentless pursuit of smarter ways, and to the understanding that in the grand theater of existence, preparedness is not just about strength, but about the wisdom to see the opening and the audacity to seize it.